My name is Kuba Vodak, and I am an iOS engineer here at STRV. And today I'm going to tell you something about flow controllers. So at the beginning, let me ask you a question. Who is using flow controllers here? Nice. Cool. So this is going to be just the basic overview, introduction into flow controllers. So after the presentation, we can discuss like your experiences and these things. So let's get into it. So at first, let's take a look on the problem that we want to solve with flow controllers. So this could be problem number one. It should be crazy storyboard. Is any one of you fan of this kind of storyboards? Over there? How do you like it? No? Okay, so I think we all can agree that it's not good. So let's take a look on another problem. This could be reusing view controllers in different scenario. So for example, you have one view controller used in onboarding and then in the app, and you are like choosing which way you are going to do. So usually there are more conditions and it might get much confused in the flow, so it's hard to read and you can easily make a bug there. Similar situation is with problem number 3. If you have different view for iPad, for example, you are using the split view or you have just some window pop-up or something, again, it might get confused in the flow and it is hard to read. But problem number most important is, again, according to my mind, are unnecessary dependencies. So this is like usual flow. We have like 4 view controllers, and you can imagine that as flow, for example, in banking app. For example, the flow could be if you want to send money to somebody. So for example, in this view controller, you choose like from which account. In this view controller, you choose like to which account you want to send money. Here, you choose like how much you want to send, and there is some confirmation or something. And that's the place where you send those data to the backend or something. So what's the problem? The problem is that, for example, here, in the third view controller, you have data from here and from here. But there is no reason to have that data there, because you might easily change something you don't want to. And if you, for example, change something here, you must review whole flow if something has changed or not. So according to my mind, it's confused and you can easily make bugs there and it's hard to read. So let's take a look on the idea that is about the flow controller. So this is one simple quote. One view controller doesn't need to know about the other. So I think that's the biggest idea of this presentation. So please keep it in mind. It's from one iOS developer. And at the end, there is a link to some blog post, and there is this quote and some other information. So you might check that. So what are the benefits? So benefits are the cleaner code, better reusability, and it's testing friendly. And now let's take a look on the solution. So what is the flow controller? So we have the same flow, but we have one extra component, which is the flow controller. And the first important note is that there is no redundant code. There is no extra code. Everything that is in the flow controller would be otherwise in those 4 view controllers. So you are just putting some code somewhere else. So it's more readable and you can like see the flow at one place. So the idea is that every view controller just gets data that needs and send the result from its action. So there is no relationship between those view controllers, and then they are super easy to reuse, to test, and the things that I mentioned before. So let's take a look on the roles of flow controller. So first role is to configuring view controller for specific context. That was the problem with the onboarding. So for example, if you have like more use cases, you need to configure the view controller for this case. So that's the role of flow controller, who configure the view controller. Then there is a providing view controller with objects. It needs to fulfill its role. Important note here is that it provides with only objects it needs to fulfill the role. So there are no extra data you might change by accident or something. And at the end, it's the listening to important events on each view controller and using that to coordinate the flow. That's the obvious function. So you are navigating through the flow. So those are the roles. Now just some basic properties. So this is the basic setup of flow controller. Again, this is the example from the banking app where you have the flow with the sending money. So here, the first thing, the account data controller, that's the place where you store those data, where you store like the account from which you are sending the money, the destination account, the amount, or also if you are modifying something, you can put here the data you want to modify, and then you just simply send the data to those view controllers to modify it. Then there is a navigation controller, so you can navigate through the flow, and the finish block, so you can notify the caller of the flow that the flow is done. So that's the basic setup. Then we have the example of coordination from the point of view of the view controller. So you can use delegates, blocks, maybe also notifications, but I think the delegates are the best way. So you have just the options that the view controller can do. So for example, in this case, the controller did cancel or did finish with the amount. So that is the amount you want to send. So there is nothing extra, super simple. So I will show you the demo, how it looks like. So at first, let me show you the demo app. It's a super simple app for creating new events. So the only thing you can do here is to create new event. So you click new event, you put some location, so Prague, next, date. So I choose some date in future. And we have the summary here, and here I would like send those data somewhere, but we click done, and that's it. New event is created. So now let's take a look on code. Presentation. Is that enough? Can you see the code? Good? Larger? Okay. Looks good. Preferences. Printing? No. Large. Okay, that's it. So that's the home view controller. So that's the home page. This is super simple. We have the storyboard here with this one screen, one button, one action. So here's the initializer of the flow. We initialize it with navigation controller. And then there is a method to start the flow. And we only listen for the did finish block. That's it. That's how you initialize the flow. And then you can refresh the view or something. Then we have the flow view controller, but I will keep it for the end. I will show you do every single view controller, which is super simple. So here we have the protocol. That's the location view controller. So we want to obtain the location. So location view controller delegate can finish with the location. It's just a string, or can cancel the action. That's the only thing it can do. Then we have the outlet with the text field. We have the delegates methods. And with the delegate, we have object lifecycle, some appearance, and did appear, appearance, it's just the buttons. And we have one action, that's the next action. So we just send the text back to the flow controller. It's the same with us, what is in the data, date view controller. One delegate with two methods, did finish with date or did cancel. Again, some outlets, delegate method, view, object lifecycle, appearance, action, update the date, and next action. That's it. And same thing with the summary. Here is just the did confirm or did cancel. There is no action with the backend or something like this. So we just confirm it, and that's it. So now let's take a look on the flow view controller. So here are the basic properties that you could see in the presentation. So that's the new event. Those are the data. So every time when I get something from every single view controller, I store it here. I have the navigation controller and did finish block. So in the initializer, I store the navigation controller. In this case, I just create new event. There is no modification. And the start method is that I show location screen. Here are the functions to show every single screen. And it's like super simple from storyboard. And I listen for the delegate, for the response from the view controller. So those are the screen methods: show date screen, show summary screen, and the finish method that would be the place where you would send those data to the backend. And I can pop to the home screen, and I call the did finish block. And here I have some extensions where I listen for the response from the view controllers. So for example, in this case, controller did finish with location. I store this location, and I choose what I want to do next. So show date screen. So that's the great benefit of this, that I can see whole flow on couple of lines of code. At one place, I have a whole flow, so I can easily read it, modify it, and it's super easy to do some changes in the code. So I guess that's it from the demo. So now back to the presentation. So here we have a summary. So as I said, there is a lack of dependency between the screen. There is higher reuse rate because there is no logic in those view controllers. Those view controllers are super stupid, as I would say, because there is no logic, so you cannot screw with anything there. And it's super simple to reuse it. Simply a code injection and the removal of any singletons. That's also a very good point, that usually if your app is very complex and you want to access data in many different locations, you are tend to use singletons, so because it's easy to access those data. And that's usually this case, that you have some flow and you are accessing randomly some data. But again, you might easily get wrong and do some mistakes. So that's the benefit, that those view controllers have only the data they need. Cleaner code, more expressive way to guide the navigation, ability to write different flow between devices while sharing most of the code, and testing each view controller view model in separation and with ease. So those are the benefits. Here are the references. The first link is from the guy that wrote the quote, and second one is the link for the code that I showed you. And here is one last quote. It's from guys who wrote the Next Step Programming. It was some famous book from '93, and they said, "A good rule of thumb is to place as little code in your controller as necessary. If it's possible to create a second controller that is only used for a particular function, do so. The less complicated you make your application's objects, the easier they are to debug." So I think that's also a great idea, and I'm trying to follow that. So questions? Over there.
Hello. I saw you use storyboards, like 5 or 4. Why?
Well, because if you have one storyboard and...
I'm not about it. I've understood that you use one storyboard for one view controller. So why? Why not Xeeps? Xeeps write for one view controller.
Because it's easy to cooperate with other team members. Because if somebody works on one view controller, he has his own storyboard, and he doesn't need to wait for coworkers to. No, that's not the answer.
No. I'm talking about XIBs. When you have one view controller, one XIB, NIP, and it's same, but old technique.
Sorry, I'm not following.
Actually, if you are using storyboards for single view controllers, you can create cells in tables more easily. So if there are cells like for only one screen, it's definitely easier to use storyboard because it allows you to create the cells in collection views and also in table views. So basically that's why we are using this like
I have one opposite opinion. Like with XIBs, it's easier to create, to do dependency injection. You can just create view controller by init and don't give anything about storyboards, remembering string identifiers. I know like SwiftGAN can just create some enums for it, but you still use string identifiers for stuff you don't need to use.
well, basically there's a whole new level to this because we are using an R-Swift library that actually generates the identifiers in the code, so we don't have problems with string identifiers. But I guess this is only like a matter of opinion. So basically, if you want to use XIBs and find them more useful, then I guess there's like no wrong way. Because that's how we are using it and it suits us. So I think that there are some cons and pros, and basically it depends on what kind of project you are doing.
That's a topic for different discussion because it's not related to like flow controller, but that's the discussion about what's better, like if it's storyboard or it's code or NIP. But thank you. Over there.
Can you somehow use flow controllers with segues? Because from what I understood, if you're using flow controllers, there's no way using segues since they bring dependencies to the picture. Am I right?
Yes, you are right, but I'm not using segues because, as you could see, we are using one storyboard for one view controller, so there are no segues. So that's one of the reasons why we are using a flow controller, because it can like replace those segues and we can see the whole flow at one place.
What if your app has like 30 screens?
Like you mean the flow? If the flow has 30 screens?
Yeah, like if you have so many screens that you're creating a chaos in your app and you would like to see it visually. I think segues are great for that. How do you do that with flow controllers? Because everything is, you have to remember the hierarchy of all the views. It's not, you cannot see it anywhere.
I see. So I think that's the problem number one that was mentioned in presentation. So you can see like everything at one place, but it might get like much confused, like if you have many connections between all the screens, because usually one view controller is used on more than one places. So there are more connections to one view controller, and you will end up with the problem number one, that it's super confused and you can see it at one place, but you will not be able to read it. Anything else? Again, there is one question.
It's not a question, it's back to this question you asked. Here, one guy who successfully used flow controllers with segues, but he do some magic with Swizzling perform to segue. So he set up all stuff in this place. You probably can Google it and found it. I don't remember properly how he did it. And second question, you say that you don't see full picture of application without storyboards. I think it's not problem of programmer, it's problem of graphic designers. I commonly ask my graphic designer to create flow, how it's named, flow map. It's one big picture when you see all screens. Easy peasy.
Thank you for the feedback. Anything else? Over there.
How is it related to model or to the view models? Are there any specifics regarding this, or do you try to shield each view controller from the
I can
model
show you
at
back
all?
the code.
Because what I have found, you use the delegates, which is maybe it could be the way how to shield totally the controllers from the flow controller from the model at all.
Well, in the model, for example, in this case, I have just one object, that's the event, where I store the location and the date. And every time when the view controller finish its action, the data are stored here. So I'm not sure like, if it's answered your question, but this is how I'm doing it here.
Well, basically you can complement this with view model, and there are actually not mutually exclusive. You can use flow controllers and the view model together and basically create a view model in your flow controller and then fetch all the actions directly from the view model. So it could make your app even simpler in the terms that you are using view models and also flow controllers. But it depends on your actual needs and how we are structuring the app, but it can be used together.
Thanks. So how do you scale this pattern? If you have a bigger application, do you end up like putting everything in one flow controller, or do you like break it down to more pieces?
The proper way should be that you have more flow controllers, and the biggest idea is that you should have like one flow controller at the beginning, which like set up the initial screen. So every app should have at least one flow controller, which set up the beginning of the app, and then for every flow, or it's up to you how you name it or how you want to use it, but you should have more flows for every action, for every flow, for every whatever you want. So it's definitely not in one flow controller. Is that the answer?
And so how do you like, you sync all the view controllers together? I mean, do you have some common interface for a flow controller or something like that?
So for example, we can talk about the banking app. So as I said, everyone knows which function we have in the banking apps. So for example, send money. That's the perfect example of flow. So you send money, you can create new account, you can request new credit card. Those are the flows, and every flow has like 5 screens, and it's similar to this example. But I used it only once in like medium-sized project, so I don't have experience like with different scaling. Anything else? Okay, so thank you for questions, and feel free to catch me at the after party and we can discuss it more. So thank you.